The supermarket was busy that afternoon. Shoppers pushed carts filled with cereal boxes, milk cartons, and frozen dinners under the harsh glow of fluorescent lights. The air smelled faintly of fresh bread drifting from the bakery section. Everything looked ordinary, until it wasn't. Down one of the aisles, a skinny boy no older than 10 clutched a loaf of bread so tightly it looked like he was afraid someone might tear it away. His hoodie hung loose on his thin frame, sleeves frayed at the cuffs. His messy dark hair fell into his wide eyes that darted nervously as if searching for an escape. A heavy hand came down on his shoulder. A security guard, broad-shouldered and stern, gripped the boy's arm. "Got you," the man muttered, his voice sharp enough to make the boy freeze in place. Heads turned, phones came out. A small circle of curiosity formed, strangers whispering under their breath as if the scene was some sort of entertainment. The boy's lip trembled. He hugged the bread tighter, as though it were the only thing in the world he could hold on to. His face was pale, his body stiff with fear, caught between hunger and humiliation. And then, heels clicked against the tile. A woman stopped at the end of the aisle. She stood out instantly. A cream-coloured dress, pearls at her neck, hair perfectly styled. The kind of woman who looked as if she belonged in a private car outside, not in a crowded grocery store. She froze when her eyes fell on the boy. Her expression shifted from curiosity to shock, as if the sight of him struck a place deep inside her. The guard still held the child, the boy still clung to the bread, but the woman, she couldn't move. Her breath caught, and for a long moment she simply stared. The guard frowned, noticing her hesitation. The boy's eyes, wide with fear, flicked toward her as if begging for someone, anyone, to step in. Something in that stare made her heart pound. The crowd waited, the guard tightened his grip, and the boy looked like he might cry. And in that instant the woman whispered to herself, almost in disbelief, "It can't be." That morning had started like every other one for the boy, quiet, cold, and empty. His small apartment sat on the edge of a run-down block where paint peeled from the walls and old mail piled up in doorways. Inside, silence filled the room. The kind of silence that wasn't peaceful but heavy, the kind that reminded you no one else was coming home. He pulled open the refrigerator door, hoping maybe something had changed overnight. The light flickered on, revealing the same thing as yesterday. A half-empty water bottle, a jar with nothing but dried mustard stuck to the glass, and air. His stomach growled so loud it almost echoed against the bare walls. He pressed a hand against his belly, wishing it would quiet down. On the counter sat a single cracked bowl. He filled it with tap water, drank it down, and wiped his mouth with his sleeve. It wasn't enough, it never was. He slipped on the same grey hoodie he wore every day, the one with a tear near the pocket. The sleeves were too long, but it kept him warm enough when the wind cut through the streets. He shoved his hands deep into the pockets, head down, and walked out into the neighbourhood. The sidewalk was scattered with trash, the air smelled faintly of gasoline, and cars passed by without slowing down. No one noticed a boy walking alone. As he walked past the corner store, his eyes lingered on the rows of chips in the window, bright bags stacked high. But he kept moving, his pockets were empty, he knew better than to go in. His feet carried him further, past rows of faded apartment buildings, until the glass doors of the supermarket slid open ahead of him. He hesitated, staring at the bright lights inside. Families pushed carts full of groceries. Kids pointed at candy displays, their parents laughing softly as they pulled boxes of cereal off the shelf. The boy's throat tightened. He shoved his hands deeper into his hoodie, fighting the ache in his stomach. He wasn't here to laugh or shop or choose. He was here because hunger left him no choice. He stepped inside, the automatic doors closing behind him with a whoosh. The smell of fresh bread hit him instantly, warm and sweet, curling through the air. His mouth watered. He hadn't smelled something that good in weeks. He told himself he'd just look. Just stand by the bakery aisle for a minute. But his heart already knew better. His hunger was louder than his fear, louder than reason. And as he moved down the aisle, his eyes locked onto the loaves of bread stacked neatly on the shelf, golden crusts glowing under the lights. His hand twitched at his side. The boy lingered in the bread aisle, his sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished floor. All around him, people passed by without a second glance. Mothers pushing carts, an old man scanning labels, a teenager tapping on his phone. No one noticed the skinny kid standing too still, staring too long, his stomach twisted. The smell of the bread was overwhelming now, warm and buttery, as if it were calling his name. He reached out, his hand hovering just inches from the closest loaf. His fingers curled, then pulled back. He looked over his shoulder, checking if anyone was watching. For a moment he almost convinced himself to walk away. But his chest ached, his throat burned, and his body screamed louder than his mind. He pressed his lips together, clenched his jaw, and reached again. This time, his hand didn't pull back. He grabbed the loaf, tucking it under his arm the way he'd seen other shoppers do, as if he belonged here. His heart pounded in his ears, so loud it drowned out the hum of the overhead lights. He tried to walk casually, like nothing was wrong. But every step felt heavy, every shadow looked like it might leap out and catch him. He glanced left, then right, as if the whole store might be staring. A few more steps, he told himself. Just reach the doors, just make it outside. But then it happened. A hand, large and firm, clamped down on his shoulder. His whole body froze. "Where do you think you're going, kid?" The voice was deep, rough, and it sent a chill racing down his spine. The boy spun around, his eyes wide with terror. Towering above him was the supermarket security guard. A man built like a wall, his uniform stretched tight across his chest. His face was stone, his grip unyielding. The boy clutched the bread tighter, as if it were the only thing he had left in the world. His lips trembled, but no words came out. Shoppers nearby slowed, curiosity sparking in their eyes. Someone whispered. Another pulled out a phone, ready to record. The circle began to close in, and the boy's heart sank deeper and deeper. The boy's face burned red as the guard's grip tightened around his arm. He tried to twist free, but the man's hold was too strong. The loaf of bread was still pressed against his chest, the paper crinkling under his shaking fingers. "Caught stealing," the guard said loudly, his words sharp enough to slice through the noise of the store. Heads turned, shoppers slowed their carts, a woman gasped, and then, as if on cue, a couple of people raised their phones, the tiny red lights blinking as they hit record. The boy's throat closed. He wanted to disappear, to melt into the shiny floor tiles, to be anywhere but here. His stomach no longer hurt from hunger, it hurt from shame. The guard gave him a little shake. "You think this is funny? You think you can just walk out with this?" His voice carried, drawing more eyes. The circle grew tighter. Some faces looked curious, others judgmental, and a few even seemed entertained. The boy's lip quivered. He hugged the bread like it was life itself. The weight of all those stares crushed down on him. He opened his mouth, but no words came out, just a shaky breath that sounded too loud in his own ears. And then it happened. The sound of heels clicking against the floor cut through the whispers. Click, click, click. Steady, deliberate, impossible to ignore. A woman stepped into the aisle. She was dressed in cream, pearls at her neck, her hair set neatly in place. Everything about her screamed of a different world, a life far removed from this messy scene. Her eyes landed on the boy. She stopped mid-step, her breath catching as though she had stumbled into a memory she didn't want to face. For a moment, her expression softened into something almost painful. Recognition, disbelief, maybe even guilt. The guard noticed her pause. "Ma'am," he said gruffly, "you know this kid? He yours?" His question hung in the air, thick and heavy, as the crowd leaned in closer. The woman blinked, her lips parting but no answer coming. The boy looked up at her, eyes wide, silently begging. The guard waited, frowning, his grip firm. For a heartbeat, time froze. One child trembling, one guard demanding, and one woman standing on the edge of a decision that could change everything. For a long second, the woman said nothing. The guard's question, "You know this kid?" hung in the air like a weight pressing down on her. The boy's eyes pleaded with her, wide and wet, while the guard's grip made him flinch. The crowd leaned closer, eager to see what came next. Finally, the woman drew in a breath. Her voice was calm but unsteady. "Let him go. I'll pay for the bread." A ripple moved through the onlookers. Some shook their heads. A man muttered under his breath, "Why would she do that?" Another whispered, "She's protecting him. Maybe she knows him." The guard didn't release his hold. His eyes narrowed. "Ma'am, this boy was stealing. We don't just let people walk out like that. Are you sure you want to get involved?" Her fingers tightened around her purse. She could feel her pulse racing, her chest rising and falling faster than it should. She knew she could walk away. She knew it would be easier to let the boy face the consequences alone. But something inside her refused to move. "I said I'll pay," she repeated, her voice firmer now. The guard looked at her for a long moment, suspicion etched into his face. Then, with a grunt, he loosened his grip on the boy's arm. The child staggered back a step, still clutching the bread as though it were more precious than gold. "Fine," the guard muttered, his tone edged with doubt, "but don't say I didn't warn you." The woman reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet. Her hand trembled slightly as she held it, not from the money she was about to spend, but from something else, something she couldn't quite name. The boy glanced up at her again, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope. The crowd still hovered, whispering, watching, recording. The woman swallowed hard. She had stepped in, but she hadn't answered the guard's question. Did she know this boy? Even she wasn't sure how to explain the strange pull in her chest, the unsettling sense of familiarity in his face. The line at the checkout felt endless, though only a few people stood ahead of them. The boy shuffled his feet, the loaf of bread pressed tight against his chest. His small hands gripped it as if someone might still snatch it away. The woman stood beside him, wallet in hand, her pearls glinting under the fluorescent light. She stared at the conveyor belt without really seeing it. Her thoughts spun too fast. Why had she stepped in? Why him, of all children? Behind them, the guard kept a watchful eye, his arms crossed over his chest. The crowd hadn't fully dispersed. A couple of shoppers lingered nearby, phones still up, whispering as they filmed. One voice floated close enough to hear. "Look at his face. Doesn't he remind you of someone?" Another answered softly, "Yeah, but I can't place it. She looks like she knows." The woman's shoulders stiffened. Her eyes flicked to the boy. He was staring down at the bread, but something in his expression tugged at her memory. It wasn't just hunger or fear. It was something older, deeper, carved into his small features. She tried to push the thought away, but her pulse quickened. She felt exposed, like the strangers around her could see the storm building inside. The cashier glanced at the boy, then at her. "Is he with you?" The question was simple, routine, yet it landed like a stone in her stomach. Her throat tightened, words refusing to come. The boy's eyes lifted to hers then, wide and fragile, waiting for an answer. She managed a nod, sliding cash across the counter. Her hand trembled as the bills left her fingers. The cashier bagged the bread, but the boy refused to let it go, clutching it tighter as if afraid it might vanish. The receipt crinkled in her hand, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the boy's face, the way it pulled her backward into a place she had long buried. A street name, a memory, a part of her life she had promised herself she'd never think about again. Her heart hammered. Outside the sliding doors, the late afternoon air felt cooler, almost sharp against their skin. The boy sank onto a bench near the entrance, the loaf of bread still locked in his arms like treasure. He tore at the paper with shaky fingers and bit into it as if he hadn't eaten in days. Maybe he hadn't. The woman sat beside him, her purse resting stiffly on her lap. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The world carried on around them, shopping carts rattling across the lot, cars honking faintly in the distance, but on that bench it felt like they were sealed inside a fragile bubble. The boy chewed quickly, then slowed, glancing at her as though afraid she might take the bread away. She didn't. She only watched, her eyes softening with every bite he took. Finally, she broke the silence. "Where's your family?" Her voice was gentle, but it carried weight, a question she almost dreaded to hear answered. The boy hesitated. He swallowed hard, clutching the bread tighter. "My mum." His voice cracked. She died last winter." His gaze dropped to the ground, his sneakers scuffing the pavement. The woman's chest tightened. He went on, his words spilling faster now, like he'd kept them bottled up too long. My dad, he left before that, said he'd find work. He never came back. His hands shook as he pulled another piece of bread free. I don't have anyone. The woman blinked hard, her throat closing. She wanted to speak, to offer something, anything, but the weight of his words left her silent. He looked at her then, really looked, his big eyes searching her face. I just needed food. I wasn't going to take more, just one. Her breath caught. In his eyes, in the trembling of his voice, she saw something more than hunger. She saw herself, decades earlier, sitting on a cracked curb in a neighbourhood she had run from, swearing she'd never return. The memory hit her like a wave, pulling her under. The woman turned her face away for a moment, blinking fast as if she could hold back what was rising inside her. The boy's words replayed in her head. No mum, no dad, nothing but hunger and silence waiting for him at home. It was too familiar, too close to something she had spent her whole life trying to outrun. She drew in a shaky breath. Where do you live? The boy shrugged, his shoulders small beneath the oversized hoodie. Down on Madison Street, near the old train tracks. He said it like it was nothing, just another forgotten corner of the city. But the name hit her like a stone to the chest. Madison Street. She hadn't spoken it out loud in years. The street where she grew up in a cramped apartment, where her shoes had holes in the soles and her stomach growled louder than her voice. The street she had left behind the moment she was old enough, swearing she'd never look back. Her fingers tightened around her purse. She could almost see it again, the broken sidewalks, the flicker of streetlights that never stayed on, the kids running barefoot through the alleys. Her own face flashed in her mind, younger, thinner, staring at a loaf of bread the same way this boy stared at his. She looked at him again, really looked. The hollow cheeks, the stubborn way he clung to the bread, the quiet desperation in his eyes. It was like looking into a mirror of her own childhood. Her throat burned. I know that street, she whispered, her voice almost too soft to hear. The boy blinked at her, confused. You've been there? She nodded slowly, painfully. I grew up there, a long time ago. The boy tilted his head, studying her as if trying to fit that image in his mind. The elegant woman in pearls belonging to the same cracked street he called home. The woman's eyes shimmered, her voice breaking. I told myself I'd never go back. I thought if I left I could erase it. But looking at you... She paused, her chest heaving. It feels like I never really left at all. The boy's brow furrowed, his mouth opening as though he had more questions than he could ask. The world around them kept moving, carts rolling by, horns sounding faintly from the parking lot. But on that bench, time stood still. The woman sat stiffly on the bench, her pearls cool against her skin, her hands gripping her purse as if it could anchor her to the life she had built. Everything in her told her to stand up, to walk away, to let this be someone else's problem. That was what she had always done. Close the door on the past and never look back. But the boy's face wouldn't let her. He sat hunched forward, crumbs on his lap, his small hands still wrapped around what was left of the loaf. His eyes darted toward her, then away, unsure if he should thank her, trust her, or expect her to vanish like everyone else had. The sight hollowed her out. She had been him once. She remembered sitting on cracked curbs, waiting for help that never came. She remembered the sting of knowing nobody was coming for her. Her throat tightened. She couldn't be another person who turned her back. Slowly she reached out, her hand hovering just above his. Her voice shook when she finally spoke. You don't have to go back there tonight. Come with me, just for dinner. The boy froze, his eyes widened, suspicion flashing first, then hope flickering faintly behind it. Why? His voice was so small it almost broke her heart in two. She swallowed hard. Because no child should have to sit alone and wonder when the next meal is coming. The boy glanced down at his sneakers, scuffed and worn thin, then back up at her. His lip trembled. Trust wasn't something he gave easily, not after all he'd been through. I don't know you, he whispered. I know, she answered softly, but maybe you don't have to. For a long moment they sat in silence, the hum of shopping carts fading behind them. Her hand stayed open, waiting, trembling slightly. The boy's small fingers twitched, as if caught between pulling back and reaching forward. His chest rose and fell, his breath uneven. And then he moved, just an inch closer. The boy hesitated for what felt like forever, his small hand hovering between fear and trust. Then slowly he let his fingers brush against hers. It wasn't much, just the faintest touch, but it was enough. The woman closed her hand gently around his, steady and sure, as if promising she wouldn't let go. They walked together across the parking lot, her heels clicking softly against the pavement, his sneakers scuffing beside her. To anyone passing by, they might have looked like family. But for both of them, this was something entirely new. Two lives colliding when neither expected it. Her car waited nearby, spotless and polished, so different from the world the boy had come from. He hesitated at the door, clutching the last piece of bread, eyes flicking nervously. She gave him a small nod. "It's all right. You're safe with me." The ride was quiet, filled only with the hum of the engine and the rustle of the bag in his lap. But in that silence, something shifted. For the first time in a long while, the boy wasn't thinking about where to find food or how to survive the night. He was thinking about what it felt like to be seen. At her home, the kitchen lights spilled warm across the counter. She set out plates, poured him a glass of milk, and slid a plate of buttered toast toward him. He ate slowly now, not rushed, each bite careful, almost reverent. The woman watched, her chest tight, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. She whispered, almost to herself, no child should ever have to steal to survive. The boy looked up, crumbs on his lips, and for the first time that day he smiled. It was small, shy, but it carried the weight of hope. The woman reached across the table, resting her hand near his. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or how this fragile bond would unfold. But she knew this moment mattered, that sitting here with him was the beginning of something neither of them had expected, but both desperately needed. Because sometimes family isn't about blood. Sometimes it's about the moment two broken lives find each other and decide not to walk away. Lesson: compassion costs little, but it can change everything. One small choice can be the difference between despair and hope. Question: if you had been there in that aisle, would you have stepped in?